They called me into the office like I was a problem to be neutralized. Not a parent. Not even a man. Just a logistical complication. It was late October, just cold enough that the wind made your skin remember pain. Maplewood Elementary, with its polished tile floors, bulletin boards full of bright slogans, and custodians pushing bleach-slick mops down the corridors like nothing in the world ever broke here. It had that same artificial calm schools always have. Like trauma doesn't happen under fluorescent lights. I'd been to that office before. Meetings for bad grades, calls about attitude problems, the usual dance of adults pretending kids were just slightly misaligned machines to be adjusted. And every time I showed up, every time I paid attention, took notes, made suggestions, every time I believed foolishly that I was part of the solution. This time it was different. No one looked me in the eye when I walked in. Not the principal, not the school counselor. Not even Linda. She was already sitting there, hands folded in her lap, one leg crossed like she was waiting for a dentist appointment. Not tense. Not nervous. Just composed. That was the first red flag. I've seen her yell at neighbors over property lines. I've seen her cry over dog movies. But today, nothing. The principal was a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a chain and a tone like chamomile tea, mild but final. She greeted me politely, nodded toward the chair beside Linda. I sat. They started talking before I even got my jacket off. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Dalton. We just want to touch base on some behavioral concerns with the boys." Behavioral concerns. That's the term they use when your stepsons call a teacher a bitch under their breath and then say it was a joke. The counselor, a young man who looked like he still wore his college ID on weekends, started flipping through a thin folder of reports. Minor things, mostly. Disrespectful tone. Disruption in class. Rolling eyes. Not handing in homework. "We're seeing some patterns," he said, with that perfect blend of concern and clinical detachment. I nodded, listened, waited for my turn to speak. I drafted a plan in my head already. Consequences at home, reduced screen time, a formal apology letter. I was ready to step in as a parent. As the parent, really, since their biological father hadn't been spotted in months. And then it happened. The counselor glanced at Linda, like he was teeing her up, and she delivered the strike. "He's not their father," she said, just like that. "He doesn't get to decide anything." Her voice didn't waver. Her gaze didn't flicker. No warning. No hesitation. It hit me like a tire iron to the throat. The counselor didn't even react. Maybe he expected it. Maybe he agreed. The principal raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. No one looked at me. I waited for her to soften it. To say something like, "He's not their biological father, but he's been a big part of their lives." Or, "We disagree sometimes, but he's helped raise them." Anything to acknowledge my presence, my years, my sacrifice. But nothing came. That's when I knew. This wasn't a meeting. It was a ritual. A quiet severance. They weren't just discussing the kids. They were announcing the chain of command, and I wasn't on it. I thought of the field trip forms I'd signed, the parent portals I logged into, the flu sh*t consents I submitted, the tuition payments drafted from my bank account automatically at 12:01 a.m. on the first of every month. I thought of birthday parties, school shopping, braces, last-minute rides, forgotten lunches, late-night fever checks, lost backpacks I replaced without being asked. But I didn't speak. Not because I was afraid, but because the game was already over. You don't argue with a verdict when the sentence has already been carried out. I stood up. My chair made a quiet scraping noise on the tile. I zipped my jacket slowly. The sound felt too loud in the small room. No one moved. No one stopped me. The door didn't close all the way behind me. I didn't care. The hallway outside was bathed in that eerie morning light that comes through thick school windows. Pale and cold, like it passed through a morgue on the way in. I walked past the front desk without acknowledging the receptionist. My boots echoed louder than they should have. Or maybe that was just the silence following me like a stain. As I passed the lost and found bin, I caught sight of a hoodie I bought for one of the boys. Still had the price tag stitching I forgot to remove. He must have left it in the gym. No one claimed it. No one thanked me for it. I walked past it without slowing. The parking lot was half full. Minivans with stickers. Moms in yoga pants. A few dads in hoodies cradling coffee. All of them oblivious. All of them looking like what I used to think we were, a family. I sat in the truck for a long time, engine off, hands on the steering wheel like they might fall off if I let go. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked pale, older than I remembered. Not angry, not sad, just erased. That's the only word for it. It wasn't a fight. Fights mean passion. Fights mean someone still wants something. This was different. This was the moment you realize your signature is on all the documents, your money is in all the systems, your name is on all the emergency contacts, and none of it matters. Because the moment someone says, he doesn't get to decide anything, and no one argues, you've been deleted. And the worst part? They'll still expect you to pay. They'll expect the tuition to come through, the lunches to be packed, the jackets to be bought when the weather shifts. They'll expect the support to stay, even if the voice behind it has been officially muted. I didn't drive home right away. I went to the hardware store, wandered the aisles, picked up nothing, said nothing. I watched other men buy things for houses they were fixing, for kids who would break them, for wives who would complain they didn't do it right. I watched fathers with toddlers in carts, buying Halloween decorations, arguing over which light bulbs to get. None of them knew they might be ghosts in their own families one day. That the same woman who kissed them goodnight could one day say, in public, in front of strangers, he doesn't get to decide anything. That the school where they show up, pay fees, and sign forms might one day treat them like a delivery driver, useful but irrelevant. I left the store empty-handed. I didn't blast music in the truck. Didn't cry. Didn't call a friend. I just drove in silence. Because silence was the only thing I still owned. At home, the kitchen smelled like reheated pasta. Linda had already fed the boys. The dishwasher was running. One of them was laughing upstairs, probably playing something online. It was a regular day, just like any other. I stepped through the door, took off my boots, hung up my jacket. No one asked how the meeting went. Linda didn't even look up from her tablet. And that, more than anything that was said in that office, told me the truth. They didn't even think I'd care, because to them I was already gone. I didn't argue. I didn't scream, because some exits don't need fireworks. Some betrayals are so quiet, they don't leave a mark on your skin, only on your place in the world. And I had just lost mine. That night, no one mentioned the meeting. Not at dinner. Not afterward. It was like the office never existed. Like the words spoken there had dissolved the moment we left the parking lot. Linda moved through the house with practiced normalcy, reheating leftovers, scrolling her phone, asking one of the boys about homework without ever looking in my direction. The boys stayed upstairs. Doors closed, laughter leaking through the vents. Life continuing, untouched by the fact that I'd just been erased in public. I didn't confront her. I didn't bring it up. I didn't ask if she meant what she said, because silence told me everything I needed to know. I sat at the kitchen table long after everyone went to bed. The house had that hollow nighttime sound. Pipes ticking, refrigerator humming, distant traffic whispering past. I opened my laptop, not with anger, but with a strange calm that felt heavier than rage ever had. This wasn't a moment for speeches. This was administration. I logged into the school portal first. Same username I'd used for years. Same password my fingers typed without thinking. Tuition accounts, activity fees, lunch plans, all under my name, all connected to my bank. I stared at the screen for a long time, remembering the first time I signed up, how proud I'd felt to be listed as guardian, how permanent it had seemed. Then I started closing things. Auto payments canceled, backup cards removed, emergency contacts edited. I didn't delete anything out of spite. I just removed myself, line by line, checkbox by checkbox, like a man cleaning his name off a lease after being told he never lived there. Next came the after-school programs, sports, clubs, subscriptions that renewed quietly every month without thanks or acknowledgement. I shut them down too. Each confirmation email felt clinical, impersonal. Perfect. I expected to feel something sharp. Vindictive. Triumphant. I felt nothing. When I closed the laptop, it was almost midnight. Linda was asleep. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her breathe, wondering if she sensed the shift in the house, wondering if she'd feel it when the systems pushed back. Then I turned off the light and went to bed. I slept better than I had in months. The phone rang at 7:12 a.m. I recognized the number immediately, the school's billing office. They never called unless something was wrong. I let it ring twice before answering. "Good morning, this is Maplewood Billing," a woman said, her voice tight, professional but strained. "We're calling because there seems to be an issue with the accounts for the Dalton children." I leaned back against the counter, coffee untouched. "What kind of issue?" "There's no active payer on file," she said. "All accounts are currently frozen. Tuition, lunches, activities, everything." I smiled just slightly. "That's not a mistake," I said. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. "Sir, without an active payer, the children won't be able to attend classes. This needs to be resolved immediately." I looked around the kitchen. The cereal boxes I bought. The shoes by the door I paid for. The family calendar with events I was never consulted on. "I understand," I said calmly. "But if I don't get to decide anything, then I don't have anything left to pay for." She started to respond. Policy language, consequences, urgency, but I'd already heard enough. I ended the call politely and set the phone down. For the first time, the system acknowledged my absence. Linda found out an hour later. I could tell by the way she entered the room, too fast, too controlled. Her confidence cracked in stages. First irritation, then disbelief, then something softer, desperate. She asked questions. I didn't answer. She talked about timing, about how sudden it was, about how this affected everyone. I listened, expressionless, hearing not remorse but fear, control slipping through her fingers. The boys hovered nearby, watching her, waiting for her to fix it like she always did. No one apologized. A few days later, the formal notice arrived. Without a confirmed payer, the seats would be reassigned. Deadlines, consequences, reality in ink. Linda tried scrambling, called their biological father. I heard the arguments through the walls. Money discussed like a foreign language. Promises made and retracted. The boys stopped laughing upstairs. For the first time, everyone understood the difference between "he doesn't get a say" and what happens when the one carrying the weight finally lets go. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I just stayed quiet, because quiet was what erased me, and quiet was what would finish the lesson. Tell me, when your role is stripped away publicly, when your authority is denied but your responsibility is still expected, do you fight to stay? Or do you simply stop paying for the privilege of being ignored? Would you have done anything differently? The house became a pressure cooker. At first, no one said much. The boys sulked, orbiting the kitchen with headphones on, whispering to each other like I wasn't in the room. Linda avoided eye contact. She moved through the space like someone afraid to wake a sleeping dog. Cautious, polite, brittle. We passed one another like coworkers in a dying company. Everyone pretending the ship wasn't sinking under our feet. But the consequences arrived faster than expected. The school didn't wait. A letter came in a thick envelope with official wording and a bright red stamp. Final notice. Without confirmed payment by Friday, both boys would be removed from enrollment and placed on a waitlist. Their names would be stripped from rosters. Schedules would be erased. They wouldn't be allowed in the building. Linda read it in the kitchen. I watched her hands tremble. She didn't say anything to me directly. Not then. But I saw the weight settle into her spine like someone had tied bricks to her shoulders. She stood frozen, letter in hand, mouth slightly open, eyes glazed. The kind of silence that only comes when the scaffolding collapses and you realize the view from the top was never yours to begin with. That night she made calls. One after another. Hushed, urgent. I heard her in the bedroom, then the bathroom with the door closed, whispering into her phone like a teenager hiding from her parents. She called their father, the real one, as she once clarified for a roomful of educators. Todd. A man I'd only seen 3 times in as many years. One Christmas drop-off with overpriced toys. One court-mandated visit. One drive-by birthday appearance where he stayed just long enough to be photographed and then vanished into whatever life he called his own. He was a ghost until money was mentioned. I heard her pleading. Her voice cracked more than once. She said things like, "Just for now. And they'll be kicked out. And you're still their father." She used his name the way you use jumper cables, trying to spark something dead. I never heard his voice, just her side of the conversation. Eventually she emerged from the bathroom with swollen eyes and a clenched jaw. She didn't speak to me, not even a glance. Just walked past like I was furniture. I didn't ask what he said. I already knew. He wasn't going to pay. Not because he couldn't, though I'm sure he had excuses, but because he didn't have to. That was the truth buried beneath the panic. He had never had to, because I was always there, paying, solving, sacrificing. And now that I had stepped aside, he'd have to look at the bill, and it didn't fit into his wallet or his pride. 2 days later, another letter arrived. A deadline reminder. This time with instructions for re-enrollment if payment failed. The school wasn't bluffing. Linda snapped that evening. We were in the kitchen. The boys were upstairs, their footsteps creaking overhead, voices muted but tense. She turned to me suddenly, with her phone in one hand and the letter in the other, and said, "We need to talk." I set down my coffee. She didn't wait. "This is getting out of control. They're not going to school next week unless something changes. Todd won't come through. You know that." I nodded slowly. "I know." She blinked. "Then do something." I looked at her for a long time. Not angry, not emotional, just tired. "I already did," I said. I stepped back. She scoffed, incredulous. "You made your point, okay? They were wrong, I was wrong, whatever. But this is serious. You can't just cut them off like this." "They cut me off first," I replied. "You did too." Her mouth opened, closed. She searched for the right defense. There wasn't one. "I didn't mean it like that," she said finally. "It was just in front of the school," I interrupted. "In front of strangers. You said I don't get to decide anything. You made it official." She looked down, ashamed for a heartbeat. But shame doesn't always lead to change. "We're talking about their future," she said. "You're punishing them." "No," I said. "I'm freeing them from the lie that they can take without giving. From the illusion that responsibility doesn't come with respect." She stepped back like I'd slapped her. "You think this is about respect? They're kids." I shook my head. "They're not kids. Not anymore. They're old enough to know what words mean. And you're old enough to know what silence costs." She didn't reply, just turned and walked out. The boys came down later. First the younger one, trying to act casual, asking if I could just pay this month until things settle. The older one hovered behind him, quiet but watching. I told them the same thing I'd told her. "I'm not your father. That's what your mother said. That's what you've made clear. So I won't act like one when it costs me everything." They didn't understand. Not really. They saw money as water from a faucet, it just flows. They didn't see the pipes, the years, the decisions behind every deposit. That weekend, panic bloomed. Calls to the school. Desperate emails. Linda waking up early, pacing the house in a bathrobe, her hair tangled with stress. The boys trying to log into their school accounts, finding them locked. The cafeteria denying preloaded lunch cards. A team coach calling to say the roster had been updated. Reality doesn't wait for your feelings to catch up. Monday morning, they didn't go to school. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Linda sat at the table, staring at a spreadsheet she'd printed. Expenses, loan options, crowdfunding plans. She didn't ask me for help. She couldn't. Not anymore. And I didn't offer. Because every time you erase someone from authority, you also erase them from obligation. I walked past her without speaking. She didn't look up. That was the moment she finally understood what I had known all along. A man without a voice has no duty. And now, the silence she we asterisk p asterisk nized was hers to carry. Tell me, was I wrong to stop solving problems I was no longer allowed to influence? Or did I simply return their silence in kind? I didn't slam a door. I didn't pack a bag in the middle of the night. I didn't stage some cinematic exit to drive the point home. No, I just stopped. Quietly. The way someone stops believing in God. The house didn't implode all at once. It unraveled. Slowly, like an old sweater caught on a nail. Thread by thread, loop by loop, until all that was left was a pile of memory no one had the patience to fold. The boys stopped pretending. Whatever thin layer of civility they'd worn around me peeled away. They avoided me in the halls, ate in their rooms, spoke to me only through their mother, like I was a contractor who'd overstayed his job. They called Todd more often now. I could hear them, the desperation in their voices climbing each day. I heard phrases like, "You're supposed to be our real dad," and "Mom says we need this now," and sometimes just silence after the ring, over and over, until they hung up without leaving a message. He didn't answer. The man they defended, the man they clung to when I was dismissed, wasn't there to catch them. He never had been. But they had never needed him before, because I was always there. And now, for the first time, they stood on the other side of a void they dug themselves. Linda tried to hold it together. She shifted into survival mode. Budget spreadsheets on the fridge. Arguments on speakerphone with loan offices. Whispers with her sister. GoFundMe tabs open late at night that she never published. She cut coupons. Sold a few pieces of jewelry. Whispered about tight months ahead with a forced smile. But the school didn't care about smiles. They wanted payment. And without it, they kept their promise. The boys were officially unenrolled by the second week of November. They received an email with their withdrawal status. No special treatment. No softening. Just a line of black text in a white inbox. You are no longer an active student. The day that email came, I found the older one, Nate, sitting on the back porch in the cold, wearing the hoodie I bought him last Christmas. He didn't say anything, just stared at the trees. I didn't approach. I didn't ask how he felt. I watched for a moment, then walked away. That was the deal now, mutual distance. No one said it, but the house began to feel like a condemned building. Everyone still inside, but each waiting for the walls to fall. And then one day I left. Not with a bang. Not with a tearful goodbye. Just a truck, a lease, a new mailing address. A few boxes. My name removed from the mortgage. Linda didn't argue. She asked a few logistical questions, forwarding addresses, keys, final bills, and that was it. She didn't cry. Neither did I. I moved into a small place 2 towns over. Near the river. Quiet street. No traffic. The kind of place where neighbors nod and don't ask questions. A place I didn't have to share with ghosts. I bought a new coffee maker. A used couch. A desk. I didn't hang pictures. Sometimes I'd sit on the porch in the early morning, coffee in hand, watching the river inch by, and I'd think about how easy it is to disappear when no one's looking for you. They didn't call. Not the boys. Not Linda. I didn't block them. I didn't vanish. I just didn't reach out, and neither did they. Because here's the truth. They didn't miss me. They missed the version of me that served them, paid for them, held up their world while being told he had no place in it. And that version was gone. 1 week after I moved out, Linda left me a voicemail. Not a long one. Her voice was tired, flat. She said, "I'm not asking you to come back. I just want to know if you're okay." I didn't answer. I played it once. Deleted it. Because I was okay. That was the problem. I was better in absence than I ever was in presence. Weeks passed. The holidays approached. I didn't get invited to anything. No texts about decorations. No updates about plans. It was like I had never been there. Never strung the lights, never carved the turkey, never paid for the damn tree. They would post pictures, I assumed. Smiles too wide. Todd showing up with some stupid gift. The illusion rebuilt, one blurry filter at a time. But they would feel the cracks. Because Todd wouldn't pay for the spring semester. wouldn't fund extracurriculars, wouldn't stay for the hard parts. He never had. And me? I was just a ghost now. The kind that doesn't haunt, just leaves space behind. One afternoon, I got a letter from the school. Not addressed to me, just a generic notice forwarded to the wrong address. A mistake. But I opened it. It was an advertisement for re-enrollment deadlines. The boys' names weren't on it anymore. I set the letter down, made coffee, sat at my desk and stared out the window. And I thought, maybe this is what freedom feels like. Not joy, not vindication, just the end of noise. No more, you're not my real dad. No more, you don't get to decide. No more bills tied to contempt. Just a quiet house, a smaller life, a life that belonged to me finally. Sometimes, when the wind is right, I imagine them. I imagine Linda explaining to a friend what happened, spinning it soft. He just couldn't handle the pressure. Or, he chose himself. I imagine the boys telling themselves I never cared, that I abandoned them, that I wasn't strong enough to be a real parent. Let them. Because if they need to make a villain of the man who stayed, who paid, who raised them until they learned how to hate him, so be it. I don't need their revision. I lived the story. 6 years of groceries, rent, dentist appointments, tutoring, holidays, forgiveness. All given freely. All erased in a single sentence. He's not their father. He doesn't get to decide anything. So I stopped deciding. And the world they built on my shoulders collapsed under its own weight. So tell me, if someone says you're not a father, if they strike your name from the family ledger but leave you on the invoice, what do? Do you beg to stay? Or do you step out of the role they assigned you and finally live like your name matters more than their silence?